Sony's Xperia Z2 is the new kid on the flagship block, and as such it brings the latest and most powerful internals, the new Snapdragon 801 system chip, a great 20 megapixel camera and so much more. How does it fare against other flagships though? Today we compare it against the LG G2, one of the most successful devices for LG. The G2 features the 13 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, and both have an equally sized 5.2-inch display. The G2 is a bit older and features slightly older technology as well, a slightly slower chip, but overall the difference is not that huge. These are two super powerful flagship devices. Which one is worth your time and money? Let's find out. The Sony Xperia Z2 features an elegant evergreen design with glass on both the back and front, while the LG G2 is made out of utilitarian glossy plastic that does not look that good, and it just doesn't feel well put together, with an occasional creaking sound from the back of the phone. In terms of size, the Xperia Z2 is noticeably taller and also slightly wider than the G2, and neither is super slim. Right below the main camera, LG has positioned the power lock key, gracefully encircled by an LED light that blinks in different colors to notify you about missed notifications. The volume buttons are located around the lock key, but they'll feel a bit wobbly. The Xperia Z2 features well-crafted metal buttons. The round lock key is particularly eye-catchy, but it can also be just a bit too small and shallow. Sony also introduces stereo speakers in the Z2. They are located inconspicuously on the front in the form of tiny strips right next to the top and bottom borders of the device. The top one hides a colorful LED notification strip that will blink in different colors when you get notifications. Moreover, the Z2 has one clear advantage over the G2, and that is its resistance to the elements. The Z2 is protected from dust and water and can withstand submersion in up to 5 feet deep fresh water for up to 30 minutes. Both the Sony Xperia Z2 and LG G2 feature sharp 5.2-inch displays with a resolution of 1080 by 1920 pixels, and both use IPS LCD technology. This new Xperia Z2 display is a huge step up for Sony on its own, as the company has had subpar displays in its last couple of its top shelf offerings, and now finally offers a display that has good viewing angles. Sony's IPS LCD has good color temperature as well, with whites that do not look too cold. Its display boasts vivid colors that are a bit unnatural though, as it has a much wider color gamut than the standard. LG's G2 colors also look rather overblown, but they have another problem. Its display has a very noticeable bluish tint, and that's a bit annoying. The actual difference in the looks of the interface of the two comes mostly from the different skins that the two phones use. Sony's Xperia UI is clean and light, with little clutter and a pleasingly uniform design language with modern iconography and snappy animations, all combined leaving a distinct feeling of an Sony Android experience. LG's Optimus UI, on the other hand, has this cartoonish visual style that is uniform in itself but comes in dissonance with the vastly different looks of pure Google apps that are often offered. The Phonebook app is rich and detailed on both, and it conveniently supports swiping between tabs. Now, the typing experience is good on both, as buttons are well spaced and typing is fast and easy on the big 5.2-inch displays. Sony's Xperia Z2 has the latest and most powerful Snapdragon 801 system chip, but while the LG G2 has last year's Snapdragon 800, the difference between the performance power of the two is not that big. In fact, for common daily tasks, both feel very zippy, and it's a rarity to have something stutter in the menus. And it's also true, however, that the Xperia Z2 is the more future-proof phone with these latest internals. For gaming, you have the Adreno 330 GPU on both handsets, and both are capable of running the latest and most graphically intense titles in admirable detail and with smooth frame rates. Internal storage is 16GB on the most basic model of the Xperia Z2, while the G2 has double that allowance with 32GB on board. You can, however, expand the memory via microSD card on the Xperia Z2, while you cannot do this on the LG G2. The browsing experience is excellent on both devices. Pages load and render swiftly, and scrolling around and zooming in and out is free of slowdowns and stutters. In terms of connectivity, the Xperia Z2 and G2 are similarly well packed with 4G LTE on board, but the Xperia Z2 has just a slight edge, as its 4G LTE modem supports higher download speeds of up to 150 megabits per second versus up to 100 megabits per second on the G2. Other connectivity options include dual-channel Wi-Fi, GPS and NFC on board of both. The LG G2 also has an infrared blaster baked in, and you can use it as a remote control for your TV or other electronics. It's a great addition for the times when you just can't find the TV remote. The Xperia Z2 does not have such an option. The Xperia Z2 comes with a 20 megapixel camera, while the LG G2 sports a 13 megapixel main shooter. The Z2 has the advantage of having the largest sensor of any Android phone. Its sensor is nearly 30% bigger than the one on the G2, for example. As for the handling, the G2 is clearly the one that is easier to use because of its more compact size and convenient location of the volume down button that you can use to snap pictures with. The actual quality of the captured images on both is among the best out of a smartphone. The Z2 outperforms the G2 by just a bit, as its photos have consistently impressive, vivid, but slightly oversaturated colors with great contrast and impressive dynamics. The Z2 has its issues though. It tends to soften detail around the edges of the image slightly, and there are some artifacts that can be noticed, but those are rather minute details. The G2 in contrast captures images that are rich in detail, we'd say even richer than the one on the Z2, but comparing the pictures you see that colors on the G2 are often muted, at times being a bit yellowish, and with the occasional overexposing of images they tend to look a bit lacking in vibrancy and liveliness. Indoors, in low light, the two cameras capture very different images. The optical image stabilization on the G2 allows the handset to shoot without firing the flash and without blurring images terribly, and this naturally translates to pictures without the usual bluifying effect of LED flashes, pictures that look better. The Xperia Z2 in contrast uses the flash in even a relatively well-lit room, which is a bit strange, but it uses it as a fill light, so colors are not strongly distorted. The Z2 and G2 also both have 2 megapixel front-facing cameras that are good enough for your occasional urge for a selfie or a video chat. In terms of video, the Xperia Z2 is capable of recording 4K footage at 30 frames per second, while the G2 can only shoot at up to 1080p. For those few who actually have a 4K monitor, the difference comes in much finer detail and texture in 4K videos. The G2 on its part can record 1080p at either 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. I have the same choice for the 1080p videos on the Z2, by the way. But its most sizable advantage is that it has optical image stabilization that works a bit better than the electronic one on the Z2. The actual quality of the recorded footage? It's great, sharp and smooth on both devices, but we prefer the colors on the Xperia Z2 that look closer to reality, while the G2 videos have a bit colder and muted appearance. Now finally, the Z2 also has the much faster autofocus, which is of crucial importance for video, so that's one big plus for the Z2. With large, sharp and vivid screens, the Z2 and G2 have the right base for a great media experience. Sony packs a great gallery app with impressive visual style that is also rich in functionality. You can, for example, pinch to zoom to resize thumbnails. And LG's gallery also supports this handy feature and is very functional but lacks that clean and sleek style. The Z2 also has an excellent video player with eye-catchy looks and a featured preview of the latest played video running on top. The G2, on the other hand, lacks such visual flair, but in terms of functionality both are similarly capable. For music, the Z2 has the Walkman player, again fitting nicely with the impressive visual style of the Sony UI overall, but it's also rich in options. The G2's music player is equally capable of playing back and categorizing your music. And we should also say that the Sony handset comes with front-facing stereo speakers that sound much cleaner, with even some depth to the sound and much louder than the ones on the G2. So one more plus for music playback on the Z2. Call quality is slightly above the average for both handsets. The Xperia Z2 has an unnatural metallic rumble to voices in the earpiece, with audible and annoying side noise, with slightly better output from the mics but still not very good overall. The G2 on the other hand has issues in reverse. Its mic sounds unclear to callers while the earpiece is fine, and we'd say that both are equally average, not great in terms of call quality. Both the Xperia Z2 and LG G2 come with large, long-lasting batteries, but the 3200 mAh battery on the Z2 is one step above the LG handset. In fact, the Z2 scored so well in our battery test that it ranks among the longest lasting phones out there with battery longevity of 8 hours and 10 minutes, while the G2 scores 6 hours and 48 minutes on our intense test. We'd easily expect the Z2 in real life to last as much as 2 days when you're not using it that much. And in conclusion, we can say that the Sony Xperia Z2 is a very well-rounded device. It features a snappy processor, the camera takes good pictures, and it's fast overall with plentiful storage and everything that you need in a flagship smartphone. Plus it's got that alluring glass design that really stands out in the Android marketplace right now. The LG G2 on the other hand has time working both for it and against it. Why are we saying against? Because it has a slightly slower processor, and you know, it feels a bit dated right now that the LG G3 is right around the corner. But on the positive side, the LG G2 is also much cheaper right now than it was at the beginning. You can actually get it for around $350 or $400 depending on the market. So it makes it a much better value for the money. And it's of course nearly a third cheaper than the Xperia Z2 right here. So if that's what you're looking for, a good value for the money, the LG G2 has that to a larger extent than the Xperia Z2. If you want purely the better in terms of hardware, specs, camera and overall, the Xperia Z2 should be your choice. For an in-depth review and comparison of these two devices, head over to PhoneArena.com. Thank you for watching.